I'm Ritter from LISI. And today I'm excited to be joined by Adrian Lürssen, the co-founder and vice president of strategic development at JD Supra. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So we saw each other last at the LMA 22, and I was looking back at LinkedIn. LinkedIn tells me we've been connected for 10 years, but who knows? We may have known each other even longer than that.
Yeah, crazy. Time really flies.
So in case there's anyone of our viewers watching or reading or listening in, can you tell us a little bit more about what JD Supra is?
Sure. We are a distribution platform for the kinds of thought leadership produced by law firms and other professional services companies, organizations. People firms put their content on JD Supra, and it is distributed out, depending on the subject matter, to subscribers who have signed up to receive, sort of opted in to receive the latest news and analysis of the day in a huge variety of issues to do with compliance and regulation and the law. And then we provide the sort of intelligent data to allow firms and organizations to make sense of that visibility that they get with prospective clients, meaningful referral sources, and anyone else who can help support their marketing and business development efforts through the consumption of their incredibly smart thought leadership.
Excellent. So it's something that I've been subscribed to for a long time. I find it really helpful to, organize content that I receive, and I know our lawyers, our clients, and their clients really appreciate getting that in a direct format. So thank you for co-founding that. So today,
sure. Well, I'm going to interrupt you and just say that it's also not lost on me that I'm recording something that will actually also be on JD Supra by the nature of the fact that you guys put your content on it to reach an added audience. And as I told you, when I saw you in Vegas at LMA, you guys produce a lot of amazing thought leadership for the kinds of people that we work with to make sense of their marketing and business development needs around digital media and all of the rest. And so I'm really pleased to be on this call, but I'm also really, really pleased that your content passes through our channels because it's so valuable and so good.
Well, thank you. I'm only one of a big team that works on our content, and I know we work really hard to put out meaningful information. I'll say, a long time ago when I joined the legal marketing industry, I didn't know where to look for thought leadership on legal marketing because it was such a niche. And I'm sure there are other people just in the whole industry of legal marketing or in law who found the same thing. No one likes getting, 500 newsletters in their inbox every day, and to be able to pick the channels you want.
Yeah.
It seems like a great, it's working out, I think, for a lot of the recipients and everyone else. So,
Yeah.
So today on News, Views, and To-Dos, we're going to ask a few questions, the same questions we always ask about what is going on in your world and in legal marketing. So our first question is, what news would you like to share with our audience?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking it. There's always a lot going on all the time in this industry, and certainly at JD Supra. One of the things that excites me the most is seeing the work of our dev team around our analytics API. We're finding ourselves in a position now. We've had an API for quite some time. Our system is built on it in many ways. But we're actually working with agencies who have the same clients as ours to deploy our clients' analytics API on their behalf. And in short, what that really means is that their analytics are now portable, so they can incorporate what they're learning about their readership on JD Supra into any dashboard of their choosing elsewhere, CRM, what have you. And we're starting to partner with agencies that are using this API to build out interesting things on behalf of their clients. And so, for example, as many people know, at LMA Vegas, JD Supra hosted a dinner with Passel. Passel is one of those agencies with whom we are starting down the road of API work on behalf of clients around analytics. The other thing that's just sort of exciting from a newsworthy point of view is what we've already discussed, which is that you and I saw each other recently at a conference. So the LMA conference is back.
In person.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, you know, I was a very small part of the large hall in 2020 for the conference. I was part of the content programming committee when Joel Hughes was president, and got to watch all of the hard work by so many people to pull off the conference and watch it disappear at the last minute because of what we just went through. And so I understand just how much work goes into this conference. And I don't know how you feel, but I thought 2022 was a phenomenal return, and in so many ways great. And so, yeah, the other exciting piece of news is it looks like in person in some fashion is back.
So, yes. And I'm so excited for it. I think some of the, one of the things I really liked about this conference was there were some new formats. Yeah, there was a fishbowl. There were some just the way the panels were run were a little bit more interesting. I mean, there were some of the typical formats that I think we get a lot out of, but there was definitely a new take on it. And for me, that's one of the most important things. I want to learn, take it back with me, and see something I
Yeah.
haven't seen before. And I think LMA 22.
Every time I see Adam Severson at a conference, other than just enjoying his company, I always tell him how important I think his role is in this community, because he's been at it for so long. And he was the moderator of that fishbowl. And it just kind of reinforced my view. He's sort of like has a depth of knowledge, has a lot of seniority, has years of experience, and he could just, not come or be at the bar while but instead there he is as a moderator, marshaling the thoughts and insights of a whole bunch of other people. And it was terrific. It's good.
Yeah, and a lot of people got to come up and share their ideas and questions. That was a very cool one.
Yeah, hopefully
So
more fishbowls.
I think there will definitely be more fishbowls based on that
Yeah.
success. So our next question is, what do you see changing in the legal industry, and what is the impact?
So my answers so far have sort of been sort of close to home and global, and I have two answers that are in the same vein here, and sort of in a sort of an immediate close to home sort of answer to that question has to do with the way in which we see the people that we work with, the organizations that we work with, respond to what it means to get the kind of visibility that they're getting for their content, with clients, prospective clients, members of the media, anybody who has sort of value in marketing and business development efforts. There, in the early days of my business and thought leadership and blogs and all of the rest, I think that the key objective had more to do with reaching more people than anything else. And over time, as that became as the dust settled on this notion that, like, oh, you can actually get a lot more readers for your work, the questions changed somewhat, and sort of became, okay, I'm getting a lot of readers, but what can I do about that? And we sort of saw fundamentally a shift in that answer, so that the production and dissemination of content online wasn't simply a communications and marketing initiative,
Mhm.
but actually had tremendous benefit for business development. So over the last several years, what we've seen is an internal shift where marketers and communications folks are very interested in what happens to the work, but the impact of that work as it reaches a large audience really has tremendous value for BD people. So I talked about analytics API. That's one of a handful of things that are happening. The other is just seeing people of many more roles wanting to have login and access, so building tools to facilitate that. So you don't just have somebody who's in charge of PR who's interested in the reach of content and how it meets media outlet, logging into JD Supra and looking at analytics. You also have industry team leaders, practice group, BD support teams, looking specifically for the opportunity that arises in companies and industries around the content that's being produced by their firms. And I think that that's a fundamentally important question being answered right now
What
It's
are
not just
what
a
are they
matter of
doing with that information? When they're looking at those dashboards and finding that data, like, how are they using it?
it's a fascinating question, and it just depends. The answers are endlessly anecdotal. And there are actually some case studies that we have on our resource center that talk about some of this. It influences content strategy, for one thing. So, for example, you find there is on JD Supra two forms of intelligence. There is my organization, my firm produced this content. Who read it? Which people in which companies in what industries. But there's also, in the aggregate, the entire span of readership on JD Supra, millions of readers. So we're able to derive some pretty interesting industry insights. So one answer to that question, for example, is a firm who had a client already who used data to determine that the client was actually deeply interested in something that they weren't representing them on and weren't writing about. And I don't remember the specifics. It could be anything, sort of attorney-client privilege, whatever it was. And so what they did, this is a high-value client, with this data point, they reached out and sort of said, we serve you on XYZ, but we could actually do for your entire legal team a webinar on concept ABC, which is the one that they realized they were very interested in. And the team was like, the client was like, that's incredibly thoughtful of you. We actually care about that greatly. We would love that webinar. Did the webinar, got work as a result of it. So it's moments like that. But that's just one data point across the entire spectrum. Sometimes it's also sort of realizing that people in financial services in this quarter are hyper interested in this following trending topic. So just going deep on a handful of posts and videos about a specific topic, and endless supply of things.
That's excellent. So, what would you change? Here's my next question for news, views, and to-dos. What would you change, or what should change that you think is taking longer than we'd like, or longer than it should in the legal market, in the legal industry?
Interesting. So I have two different answers to that. The first is that I think that the firms out there, for example, who hear what I'm saying about the sort of deployment and use of analytics, firms who are not doing that, sometimes the reason for it is just resources. We don't have the time. We don't have enough people. There are things that everyone can do. You can schedule a half an hour once a month or half an hour twice a month and look at analytics and disseminate them and sort of say to a practice group leader, your clients are care about this right now. The next time you call them, here are 3 conversation starters. That's actually something that one of our clients does. It's sort of like they disseminate. So there are things that you can do that don't take a huge amount of time. But I think that anybody who isn't interested in the opportunities within their analytics for growing business should start investigating ways to make that happen. That's the first thing. The other is what we were talking about earlier. We're both at this conference, and I'm a person who's I'm a white male. I'm overrepresented in every facet of life, and so I'm very hesitant to talk about things that I'd rather just listen and support other people's voices in. But DEI obviously matters to everyone: diversity, equality, and inclusion. And I want to hear from more people about that more often and keep the pressure on, because what has been made clear is that law firms' clients care about this issue greatly, and the question is at the rate at which law firms are changing in that regard, which is why whenever we can, we publish any voice that we can about this issue of DEI and moving it forward. The one thing that I would add to this conversation about what's new, what's exciting, is going to LMA Vegas and seeing that in the 2 years that we've been apart and haven't gathered in person, something seems to have happened. There was an interesting and very good to see, and dare I say, exciting makeup of the people there. There was more diversity. There were more people of color in super interesting senior roles, participating in the education. And I reflected on this with a couple of people who put the conference on, and they had noticed too, and were very pleased to hear it. And I think it was one of the most heartening things that I've seen. And so in answer specifically to your question, I think DEI, just don't let up the pressure. Let's enact that change. I personally support it and want to hear about it more than talk about it. It's not, I don't really feel like it's my place, but I do want to reflect that Vegas, in a very meaningful and positive and happy way, seems to be showing that things are changing within firms.
I noticed that too.
Yeah.
And there were several programs on that topic. It wasn't just like an obligatory one topic. There were several,
It
and I
wasn't
think
yeah.
they came
It
with
certainly
different.
wasn't an overthought.
Yeah, and they had different goals in each of those. I mean, I not for nothing, I appreciate you raising that because um, this is a conversation that everyone needs to have. And we have clients come to us all the time and say, we have these diversity goals, but they're still goals and we're working on them and we haven't achieved them yet. But how can you help us with our marketing or our a website or, those types of things? And it's, even though it's a delicate subject, it's something we need to keep talking about, right? And
Yeah.
and reinforce that it's important to everyone. And if it's not a priority for a firm, then I think we're seeing, and we've seen data on this, that there could be serious financial ramifications because it's important to that firm's clients,
Yeah.
whether they like it or not. So
Yeah. It's sort of like, it's very hard for me to talk about. I grew up in apartheid era white South Africa, so I was born just into a historical position of privilege, and I've sort of come to realize that what I can do is support and listen,
you
and
know,
and that's what I'm mainly interested in. But I don't think that you can talk about LMA 2020 Vegas without noticing how significant the diversity seemed to be relative to other years and relative to how necessary it is in this industry.
mhm.
And it was just, we shouldn't even be having this conversation. We should be having a conversation about smart people sharing smart thoughts. And it shouldn't matter in the least what gender they are, what skin color they are, but here we are and we're doing it. And it's good to see that it's a step. It seems as though it's a fairly significant step in the right direction during the course of the last 2 years when we haven't been gathering.
Yeah, and I think what you said, it's relative to other years. We're not saying that,
Yeah.
hey, something has been achieved, there's been progress. So
Yeah.
more to do. More to do there.
More to do.
All right. So our last question for news, views, and to-dos is, what advice would you like to share with our audience?
I wish my children would ask me this question more often, but different topics. Another thing about the last 2 years that is fascinating for me is the way in which. So again, JD Supra has been around for more than 10 years. It's sort of approaching 15 at this point. And one of the things that I have said since the beginning of time, as I've been invited to speak places in my capacity at JD Supra, is that in an age in which everyone has the technical means to say something, it's really enviable to be in a position where you actually have something to say. And that's where we find many of the thought leaders in this space. Lawyers actually have a lot to make sense of for very key people, clients and prospective clients and all of the rest. And it's kind of a perfect marriage of technology and information, need to know information. And so this has been said in theory and abstract for years, and everybody has generally acknowledged it. And I think that there's nothing positive to say about the last 2 years in terms of the pandemic, but one of the glimmers of hope maybe that showed itself among others is that this notion of lawyers, thought leaders in professional services making sense of chaos on behalf of a very specific group of people couldn't be any more true. So we just really saw, from the point of view of JD Supra, which sits on a lot of content from a lot of sources, making sense of a lot of issues. And over the last several years, over the last 2 years with COVID, that began with insurance and force majeure, and went on to mask mandates and all manner of issues, and HIPAA, and just everything to do with what's happened over the last 2 years, and more. It has become really clear from the readership and the quality of the readership, that sort of, again, just clients as prospective clients, that it couldn't be more true that lawyers have something meaningful to say, to add to the conversation.
Mhm.
And so I share that as maybe an obvious point to everyone, that what's important is getting it right. And so even today, after all these years of people sort of visiting the world of thought leadership and insight and commentary from law firms and professional services, oftentimes people mistake breaking the news with making sense of the news. So so sometimes you'll see firms just kind of reporting what everybody already knows, and other times you'll see firms introducing this news that has been reported, and then making sense of it on behalf of their clients. This happened, and here's how it impacts you, and this is what you should do as a consequence. And that kind of I'm going to see this technology, if we can, with my water glass, and try to get my water glass over to you. I'm sorry that you're coughing. My point is simply that making sense of the news is what people should be doing, not reporting the news, and that is in the details. Thought leadership as a value add. I'm so sorry that you're having
Yeah,
your.
sorry about that. I have a bit of a froggy throat. Well, one thing, one thing I was just thinking. Excuse me. Um, you have a view into. You have a unique view into like what people are reading. I'm so.
Mm,
Excuse me.
that's okay.
Frog. So you have this unique view into what people are not just writing about, but what people are actually reading. So
Hmm.
you have this interesting angle on the trends that are really interesting and that are really resonating with people that otherwise, we write things that we think people care about, and you get to find out what they actually do. So, all right, I think
Yeah, and
go on.
yeah, well, you said it really well. You said succinctly what I have sort of meandered around in this entire conversation, and that's exactly right. And that's a very profoundly important insight about how analytics supports content efforts. So, the beauty of the digital age is that you no longer have to hope for what people are interested in or guess what people are interested in, but data supports what people are interested in.
Mhm.
And it's such a large and noisy informational landscape that when you learn that people in a specific industry are actually interested in this, or people in a company that you're serving are actually interested in this subject, then you write about it and write about it again and write about it again. One piece of content isn't enough. A series is what you're going for. So yeah, having actual meaningful insight into what your readers and clients want is everything.
That's awesome. Yeah, you have such a cool view of it. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for sharing your insights with me and our audience today. This has been super informative and interesting. And thanks to our viewers. We appreciate you listening in and watching, and catch us the next time on LISI's News, Views, and To-Dos. Bye.